The champagne glasses clinked like tiny bells of mockery around me. I stood in the corner of the ballroom at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Chicago, wearing a black and white maid's uniform that was 2 sizes too small, my hands trembling as I refilled glasses for people who wouldn't meet my eyes. My name is Victoria. I'm 54 years old, and until 6 months ago, I was the CEO of Hammond Industries, one of the largest event management and hospitality consulting firms in the Midwest. But none of these people knew that. They thought I was exactly what my daughter-in-law wanted them to think. A pathetic woman so desperate to stay in her son's life that she'd agreed to be humiliated at his own birthday party. What I didn't know when I agreed to wear that uniform was that my silence would cost my daughter-in-law everything she'd spent 3 years building. By the time the night ended, the entire room would witness a reversal so complete, so devastating, that it would become the story people whispered about at Chicago country clubs for years to come. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about how YouTube works. The algorithm decides who gets to see the ending of this story based on one thing: engagement. If you're not subscribed, if you don't leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, YouTube assumes you're not interested and stops showing you the content. I've seen people spend hours searching for part 2 of stories they never got to finish. Don't let that be you. Subscribe right now. Comment your city below. Because what happens in the next 48 hours, you won't believe it, even when I tell you. So let me take you back to where it all started. To the moment I should have seen the truth but chose to look away instead. 3 years ago, my son Connor married Melissa at a vineyard in Napa Valley. I paid for the wedding $250,000 for 300 guests, imported roses, a 12-piece orchestra, and a dress that cost more than my first car. I did it gladly. Connor was my only child, the center of my world since his father died of a heart attack when Connor was 15. I'd built my company from nothing, working 18-hour days, missing soccer games and school plays, telling myself it was all for him. For his future. For the security I never had growing up in a trailer park in southern Indiana. Melissa seemed perfect at first. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are long blonde hair, green eyes, a smile that looked genuine in photographs. She worked in marketing for a tech startup, spoke 3 languages, and knew how to work a room. Connor was besotted, and I was lonely enough to mistake her charm for actual affection. The warning signs were small at first. The way she'd touch my arm and say, "Oh, Victoria, that dress is so brave for your age." The comments about my house in Lincoln Park being cozy when she knew damn well it was worth $3 million. The way she'd plan family dinners and forget to invite me, then apologize with wide, innocent eyes. It must have slipped my mind. You know how busy I am. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my own insecurities onto a young woman who was just trying to find her place in our family. My therapist, Dr. Raymond Chen, who I'd been seeing since my husband died, told me I needed to set boundaries. But how do you set boundaries with a woman who has the power to keep you from your only son? 6 months ago, everything changed. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2. Caught early, excellent prognosis. I told Connor immediately. He cried on the phone, said he'd come stay with me during treatment. I told him not to be ridiculous, that I'd be fine, that I had the best doctors money could buy. What I didn't tell him was that I was terrified, that I lay awake at night, touching the lump in my breast and wondering if this was how it would end alone in a hospital room. All my money and success meaning nothing. 2 days after my diagnosis, Melissa called. "Victoria, I've been thinking. You're going to need help during your treatment. Why don't you move in with us? Just temporarily." I should have questioned it. Should have wondered why she was suddenly so concerned. But I was scared and lonely and desperate to feel like I still had family. So I said yes. The house they'd bought in Oak Park with my down payment as a wedding gift had a guest suite above the garage. Melissa set it up beautifully. Fresh flowers, expensive sheets, a basket of organic snacks. For the first week, she was attentive. She drove me to my first chemo appointment, held my hand while the poison dripped into my veins, brought me ginger tea when the nausea hit. Then Connor had to travel for work, a 3-week trip to Singapore, and everything changed. The morning after he left, Melissa knocked on my door at 6 a.m. "I need you to do something for me," she said. No greeting, no warmth, just cold, flat demand. I was still groggy from the anti-nausea medication. "What is it?" "We're hosting a dinner party tonight. 8 people. I need you to help cook and serve." I blinked at her. "Melissa, I have chemo again tomorrow. I'm not feeling well." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Victoria, you're living here rent-free. The least you can do is contribute. Unless you'd prefer to go back to your empty house and manage on your own." That was the first time I understood. This wasn't kindness. It was control. But I was too weak to fight, too scared of losing Connor. So I cooked. I served. I cleaned up while Melissa and her friends laughed in the living room, their voices carrying up to my room above the garage where I vomited quietly into a bucket. Over the next 3 months, it got worse. She had me doing laundry, cleaning bathrooms, running errands. Always with the same threat implicit in her voice. Asterisk, do this, or you'll lose your son. Asterisk, I stopped telling Connor about it during our weekly video calls. What was I supposed to say? That his wife had turned me into unpaid help. He'd think I was being dramatic. Melissa was always so sweet when he was around, so affectionate and concerned. She'd even had professional photos taken of the two of us, her arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling, that she posted on Instagram with captions about chosen family and the mother I always wished I had. My company, meanwhile, was running without me. I'd promoted my VP, Daniel Morrison, to acting CEO while I underwent treatment. Daniel was brilliant, Harvard MBA, 15 years of experience, loyal to a fault. He called me weekly with updates, asked for guidance on major decisions, made sure I knew I was still needed. Hammond Industries had secured a major contract with the city of Chicago to manage all official events for the next 2 years. Daniel had negotiated it personally. The contract was worth $40 million. One of those events was Connor's 30th birthday party. Melissa had been planning it for months. She wanted it at the Renaissance Hotel, the grand ballroom, 200 guests, live DJ, open bar, the works. She'd submitted a proposal to the city's event management office, not knowing that all proposals went through Hammond Industries, not knowing that I'd see every detail of her plans. The party was scheduled for a Saturday in October. 2 weeks before, Melissa sat me down at their kitchen table. "I have a proposition for you," she said. I was tired, so tired. The chemo was working, but it had taken everything from me. My hair was gone, my energy was gone. Some days, getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. "What is it?" She slid a piece of paper across the table. "I want you to work the party." I stared at her. "Work it? As a server? In uniform?" "I think it would be really meaningful. You know, showing Connor how committed you are to his happiness, how willing you are to humble yourself. For family?" The words hit me like a physical blow. "Melissa, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. And if you refuse, I think Connor needs to know how unsupportive you've been, how you've been living here, using our resources, and giving nothing back." I looked at her across that table and saw it clearly for the first time. The calculation, the cruelty. This wasn't about Connor's birthday. This was about power. About breaking me completely. I should have said no. Should have walked out right then. But the thought of losing Connor, of him believing her lies, was more than I could bear. "Fine," I whispered. "I'll do it." Her smile was triumphant. "Wonderful. I already ordered your uniform." The night of the party, I stood in that ballroom and felt every eye on me. Some people recognized me. Chicago's business community isn't that large, but they looked away quickly, embarrassed for me. Others just saw an older woman in a maid's uniform, invisible and irrelevant. Connor arrived. At 8, Melissa on his arm in a red dress that probably costs $5,000. He hugged me briefly, distracted by the crowd of friends and colleagues waiting to celebrate with him. "Thanks for helping out tonight, Mom," he said. "Melissa said you offered." I forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Anything for you." The DJ played top 40 hits. People danced and drank and laughed. I refilled champagne glasses and cleared plates and pretended I couldn't hear the whispers. Then, around 9:30, Melissa took the microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Her voice rang out over the speakers, cutting through the music. The room quieted. Connor stood next to her, his arm around her waist, smiling. "I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate my incredible husband," Melissa said. "Connor, you are the most amazing man I've ever known, and I'm so lucky to be your wife." The crowd applauded. Connor kissed her cheek. "But I have to share something else," Melissa continued. "Some exciting news about our family. You all know Connor's mother, Victoria." She gestured toward me. I felt my face burn as heads turned. "Well, Victoria has decided to make a change in her life. She's going to be working for us now, full-time, as our household manager." The words hung in the air. Household manager, a polite term for servant. "She's even here tonight, getting a head start." Melissa's laugh was bright and cruel. "Let's give her a round of applause for her dedication." A few people clapped uncertainly. Most just stared. I saw pity in some faces, disgust in others. Connor looked confused, like he wasn't sure if this was a joke. I stood frozen, the champagne bottle in my hand, and felt something inside me crack. Then the music cut out completely. The DJ looked confused, checking his equipment. But the silence held. And into that silence came the sound of footsteps. A man walked into the ballroom. He was in his late 50s, wearing a Tom Ford suit that I recognized because I'd given him the Christmas bonus that paid for it. Daniel Morrison, my VP, acting CEO of Hammond Industries. And he was carrying a leather portfolio embossed with my company's logo. "Excuse me," Daniel's voice carried across the silent room. "I'm looking for Mrs. Victoria Hammond, CEO of Hammond Industries and primary stakeholder of the contract funding this event." The room seemed to tilt. I saw Melissa's face go white. Saw Connor's confusion deepen. Daniel's eyes found mine across the crowd. "Ah, Mrs. Hammond. There you are." I set down the champagne bottle. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, burned away by something else. Something that felt like rage and relief and righteous fury all mixed together. I walked toward Daniel, my cheap shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The crowd parted. When I reached him, I untied the apron and let it drop to the ground. "Daniel," I said, my voice clear and calm. "Thank you for coming." He handed me the portfolio. "I apologize for the interruption, but we have some urgent contracts that require your signature. The finalization of the city's event management agreement, including the provisions for this event." I opened the portfolio. The contracts were there, as we'd planned, all requiring my signature as CEO. I looked up at the crowd, at the faces staring at me in shock and confusion. Then I looked at Melissa. "You see," I said, my voice carrying in the silent room what my daughter didn't know when she planned this lovely party is that Hammond Industries, my company, holds the contract for all city-sponsored events, including this one. We're not just managing it, we're funding it. The venue, the catering, the DJ, the flowers, the open bar, all of it comes out of our contract budget." Melissa's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "When Melissa submitted her proposal 3 months ago, I approved it personally," I continued, "because it was for my son's birthday. Because I love him. But I did include one clause that she clearly didn't read carefully. The clause that states that funding is contingent on the client's good faith adherence to professional standards and ethical conduct. I pulled out a single sheet of paper from the portfolio. This is a termination notice. It states that due to the client's violation of ethical standards, specifically the exploitation and public humiliation of a contract stakeholder, all funding for this event is hereby terminated, effective immediately. The room exploded into whispers. Connor pushed through the crowd. "Mom, what are you talking about? What's happening?" I looked at my son and saw the confusion in his eyes, the pain, and I knew I had to choose. I could back down, could laugh it off, could let Melissa win to preserve his happiness, or I could choose myself. "Connor," I said softly, "I love you more than anything in this world, but your wife has been abusing me for 3 months, making me work like a servant while I underwent chemotherapy, humiliating me, threatening to turn you against me if I didn't comply. And tonight, she tried to make that humiliation public." His face went pale. "That's not, Mom. That can't be true." "It is true," I said. "Every word. And I have documentation, texts, emails, recordings. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm just asking you to see the truth." I turned to Melissa. She was trembling, her perfect composure shattered. "You can keep the house," I told her. "It was a wedding gift. It's yours. But everything else, the party, the lifestyle you've built on my generosity, that ends tonight." I looked at Daniel. "Execute the termination. Contact the vendors. Tell them Hammond Industries is withdrawing funding immediately." "Wait," Melissa's voice was shrill. "You can't do this. There are 200 people here. Connor's friends, his colleagues. You'll ruin his birthday." "No," I said quietly. "You did that the moment you put me in this uniform." I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted again. I heard Connor call my name, but I didn't stop. I'd spent 3 months being invisible. Tonight, I was done disappearing. Daniel caught up with me in the lobby. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the craziest," he said. "Maybe both." I was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off. "Your car's out front, and Victoria." He handed me a folder. "Your latest scans. Dr. Patel's office sent them over. You're in complete remission." I took the folder with trembling hands. Complete remission. Complete. The cancer's gone. I sat down hard on a lobby chair. Daniel sat beside me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "What happens now?" I finally asked. "Now, you go home. You rest. You heal. And on Monday, you come back to work. We need our CEO back." I thought about my empty house in Lincoln Park. The house I'd been afraid to go back to because it represented loneliness and failure and all the things I'd lost. But maybe it didn't have to represent those things. Maybe it could just be home. Connor called me 4 hours later. I was sitting in my living room, still in that terrible uniform, drinking wine and watching the city lights. "Mom," his voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "I need to talk to you." "Okay." "Melissa told me everything. What she did, what she made you do." "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know you didn't. I've asked her to leave. She's staying at her mother's. I don't know if I can forgive this. I don't know if our marriage can survive this." I closed my eyes. "Connor, I didn't do this to break up your marriage. You didn't break it up. She did, by treating you like that, by lying to me." He paused. "Are you really in remission?" "Complete remission. Thank God." His voice broke. "I almost lost you, and I didn't even know it. You didn't lose me. I'm right here. Can I come see you?" "Tomorrow. I'd like that." We talked for another hour. About Melissa, about the cancer, about all the things we'd left unsaid for 3 years. It wasn't resolution. It was just a beginning. 3 weeks later, I was back in my office at Hammond Industries. The corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Daniel had left everything exactly as I'd arranged it, the photos of Connor at various ages, the awards and certifications, the abstract painting I'd bought at a gallery in River North. My assistant brought in my schedule. You have the Chicago mayor's office at 10, the convention center board at 2, and dinner with the Northwestern Board of Trustees at 7. I looked at the schedule and felt something I hadn't felt in months: purpose, direction, the knowledge that I was exactly where I belonged. Connor and Melissa were in marriage counseling. I didn't know if they'd survive it, but that wasn't my problem to solve. My problem had been losing myself in the fear of being alone, and I'd learned, in the hardest way possible, that being alone was better than being diminished. 6 months after that night, I stood on the stage at the Chicago Business Women's Association annual gala. I'd been named Business Leader of the Year. The award sat on the podium in front of me, catching the light. "Thank you for this incredible honor," I said to the crowd of 800 women. "I want to share something with you tonight. A year ago, I was standing in a ballroom, wearing a maid's uniform, being publicly humiliated by someone I'd tried to love as a daughter. I was sick. I was scared. And I'd convinced myself that my worth was tied to how much I could sacrifice for other people's comfort." The room was silent. But that night, I made a choice. One chose myself. I chose my dignity. I chose to believe that I deserved better. And that choice saved my life. I looked out at those 800 faces, saw recognition in so many eyes. So if you're struggling tonight, if you're making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be, if you're tolerating mistreatment because you're afraid of being alone, I want you to know you are worth more than that. You deserve more than that. And you are enough, exactly as you are. The applause started small and built until it filled the room like a wave. After the gala, I drove home through the Chicago streets. The city looked beautiful, lit up and alive and full of possibility. I thought about Connor, who was slowly rebuilding his life after his divorce became final. I thought about my company, stronger than ever. I thought about my health, my second chance, my future. And I thought about that woman in the maid's uniform, standing in a ballroom, afraid to speak her own truth. I wished I could tell her that it was going to be okay, that the fear would pass, that choosing herself wouldn't cost her everything, it would give her everything. But she'd had to learn that on her own, just like we all do. I pulled into my driveway in Lincoln Park. The house was dark, but it wasn't empty. Not anymore. It was full of my memories, my achievements, my hard-won peace. And that was more than enough. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run along the lake. The sun was rising over the water, painting the sky pink and gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Breakfast this weekend. I want you to meet someone, just as a friend. No pressure. But I think you'd like her." I smiled and texted back, "I'd love that." Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Fully, completely, unapologetically mine. And that was the happiest ending I could have asked for.